Camera basics, the fundamentals of photography. That's what we're going to be covering in this video, specifically aperture and aperture control and how that allows you to be super creative. Welcome back to the channel, folks. Barry Mountford here. If you are new to the channel, this channel is all photography related and we are going to be covering camera basics. Not something I've touched on much on the channel, but with this video and future videos, I'm going to be covering a lot more camera basics to get you guys up and running in your photography. This video though, we're going to be covering aperture and specifically how to allow you to be super creative. Now, what is aperture and how can we control it? Well, aperture is basically just an opening in your lens which allows us to control two things: depth of field and how much light comes through. So say for instance you're in a situation where you're shooting in a dark environment and you need a lot of light to come in. We then need to start using our f-stops, our low f-stop numbers at say 1.8, 1.4, 1.2, whatever the lowest f-stop you can go to. And what that does is opens up the iris in our lens wide open to let all that light come flooding in. So if you're in a low light situation, you want to be shooting at f1.8, f1.4 or 1.2 or whatever the lowest f-stop your lens goes to. But alternatively, if you're outside on a bright day and there's too much light and you need to let less light coming in, what you then need to do is stop your iris down, stop that lens down to a higher f-stop number, say f8 to f16. That then stops all that light coming into the camera and it allows you to get the correct exposure on your image. But what it also does is it allows you to be super creative in your images. It allows you to control the depth of field. So if you want a nice blurry background, you would shoot wide open, have the iris wide open at f1.8, 1.4, 1.2, and what that does, it really throws that background out of focus and allows you to just focus in on the subjects. Ideal for portrait photography, food photography, can be used in product photography, but essentially product photography you want everything sharp. But it gives you that creative control. Let's take a look at this scene that I'm recording at now. I'm shooting at 35mm, 1.8. I've got the background kind of out of focus a little bit because it's just a little bit messy. I don't want all that in the scene. But what happens if we're shot at f8? Well, let's take a look at that. We'll change the camera settings now that we're recording on to f8. And as you can see, it brings everything in focus in the background. And I don't really like the look of that. So that's where we get that creative control to choose the depth of field within our images. That was video, but let's take a look at photography. I had planned on going out this week and shooting this video outside, giving you guys lots of reference photographs and lots of kind of examples that we can use. But last week it was sunny, t-shirt and short weather. This week it's snowing and we've got a full week of snow ahead. So we're going to be doing it in the house. I'm going to record the EVF so you guys can see exactly what's happening through the lens. I'm going to go in the living room. I'm going to show you the difference between shallow depth of field and a great depth of field. As you can see here, we've got the camera set to f1.8 and that means our aperture is wide open. It's the biggest it can actually be. It's letting tons of light in and obviously it's creating a nice shallow depth of field, which is what I want. Sometimes in a situation where there's a lot of busyness going on behind, you just want to blur that background and take that element out of your photograph, create a nice shallow depth of field, allowing us to just focus on your subject. If we stop that lens down, that then is going to bring everything into focus, and that's where we get a lot of control over the aperture and how our images turn out. So when we use this flower as an example, again you can see if we shoot wide open at 1.8, it gives us a nice look to the image. It focuses specifically on a certain area, the rest of it just folds away to blur, and that's nice. That's a nice creative control over the image. But if you want everything in focus, you then have to stop down that lens so you get to choose how the depth of field looks in your images, and that is a very powerful tool to have. Aperture control allows you to be super creative. That, along with shutter speed and ISO, working them all together allows you to be even more creative. But we'll cover that in other videos that I will be posting. I just wanted to keep it simple, keep it basic, understanding aperture control, which is what this video is about. So let's quickly go back over the fundamentals of aperture control. Aperture is a hole which allows light in through your lens. Now we get to control how big and how small. We have that by choosing the f-stop number of our choice. So if we want a shallow depth of field, we're going to be choosing f-stops around f1.8, f1.4, f1.2, even f2.8 to get a nice shallow depth of field and blur that background. But if we want a greater depth of field, if we're shooting architectural, landscape, that's when we choose a higher f-stop number to get everything in the image in focus, which allows us to show everything in the scene. And that's where us, as a creative, have that full control over how that image turns out. And that is very powerful. That is the basics of Aperture and Aperture Control and how it can allow you to be super creative in your photography. If you've liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because I will be posting more camera basic videos covering shutter speed, ISO and other fundamentals in photography to allow you to capture great images. And the shutter speed one, you want to see that one, because that again can allow you to be really creative in your photography. So again, thanks very much for watching, folks. It's been great to see you, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the next one. See you then.